Kyle's cabinet, former Conservative MP Neil Parish, broadcaster and former councillor Denise Headley, and former Labour advisor Frankie Leach. Frankie, I'd love to start with you tonight. Your response to that poll, 10,000 people that watched this show, 84% said the money, the $2.3 billion to help Ukraine, that announcement about the tanks, would be better off spent on a cost of living crisis at home. What's your response to that?
I can understand completely why people feel that an increased amount of defence spending when we're facing a cost of living crisis is something that they feel should be kind of redistributed towards kind of what we call domestic spending. Often people say the same about international development money as well. And what I would say is that in the same way that I think we should protect and value international development spending for all of the reasons that Tobias Ellwood said, which is that it does come back to the public in ways, as he said, things like grain prices. One of the things that the grain price has resulted in is a massive famine in East Africa, which affects issues like migration. So it does kind of all come back round to this circle.
It does, Neil Parish, but the message is either not getting through to the British public or because of what's going on right now, they're not listening.
Yeah, I think Tobias Ellwood summed it up very well. We're not getting the message over. But I also think that it's the Putin regime that we've got to get rid of. And you've got to actually drive them out of the Ukraine. Then we get a better regime in Russia. We can then get gas prices back.
But what
we
about
can then get the grain to Africa.
Neil, what about...
All of these things will work.
But what about in the meantime, when people cannot afford their bills?
I understand that entirely, but until we actually sort the situation vis-à-vis Russia, we're never actually going to get the price of energy down.
Yep.
You know, we're subsidising it hugely, rightly, but we're borrowing money to do it. All of these things, if you think about the amount of money we're borrowing actually to help people with their electricity bills, actually what we're actually spending, actually sending the tanks actually to the Ukraine is money well spent. It also made the Germans actually come round to the fact that send the Leopard 2, which are very effective against the Russian tank.
Denise Headley, welcome to Jeremy Kyle Live. First time, delighted to have you on. What's your response? 2.3 billion quid, money well spent?
No, it's money poorly spent. I think that we should be focusing far more on domestic issues. We have a cost of living crisis. We have people eating Weetabix 3 times a day, and some parents are queuing at food banks. And I absolutely believe that there should be a more focused directive on the British public when it comes to that. We've always got money for war.
But how do you answer what Frankie said? That's an interesting point. We've always got money for war.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I don't really like the idea of increased defence spending, but what I would say is I worry slightly that the political message it sends out when we say, actually, yeah, let's take away our money for our international pursuits when it comes to things like defence spending and international development spending, to put it all back on the domestic agenda, because, as I said before, those international issues affect the domestic agenda. But clearly there is a PR problem around spending and the war in Ukraine. And it is important to point out that the UK is one of the highest spenders when it comes to putting money into Ukraine. And what it is paying for is not international development or humanitarian responses to Ukraine. It's increased defence spending, which is a different thing.
We've still got to make sure that we feed people properly, and there is a real issue here. I mean, we have money to Fair Share and all these charities, but we don't get enough money out, because I'm one of these people that, not just saying this now, I said it when I was in Parliament, we really have got to make sure the food gets to everybody. So I think it's not a case, either or. It's a case that we do actually need to sort the situation out in the Ukraine and lead by example, but we also need to do a lot more to make sure people have enough food, because there is a real problem now. Inflation in food, you see, is even higher than the rate of inflation. You're probably talking 15% on a lot of foodstuffs, and that's where it's really bit.
But just to pick up on that,
I don't agree. The reason I don't agree is because I think that NATO and its allies are effectively longing out the war by continuing to fund the Ukrainians. As far as I'm concerned, in my opinion...
Longing out the war? But if they don't help them, then the Russians will win, and that will affect the whole of Europe, won't it?
And they won't stop the Ukraine, you see. That's the trouble. They will go on into Poland and other countries.
Who owns those tanks who are going over there? And if they are destroyed, as was being said by, I think, the Russian ministry, that he said we're going to destroy them anyway, is that an attack on NATO? Are we being dragged into this proxy war? And that's what this is, in my opinion, a proxy war.
But you see, we will get dragged in if they don't stop in the Ukraine. They will go into Poland, they will go into NATO countries.
But I think she's
and
right,
so
we kind of
therefore,
already have
I
been
think
dragged
you've
in.
got to drive them out of the Ukraine. The Ukrainians have got... I mean, look, if we were being attacked, if Scotland was being attacked or Wales were being attacked, we would actually go there and support
Everybody
them.
has
And so
got
therefore,
security
we
concerns.
do
I don't
need to
accept that
support
premise.
Ukraine.
I don't want to say, go on.
Everybody has got security concerns, and the expansion of NATO is a security concern for Russia. And that's
You're
the
not
reason
sitting
why...
here defending Russia, are
No,
you?
I'm not defending anybody's behaviour in terms of going and invasions. But what I'm saying is that...
It's a sovereign country.
The expansion of NATO created security concerns for Russia.
But-
and as a consequence of that,
I'd like to answer that one, please.
consequence of that, they responded.
Is that their justification
Yeah.
of an
has
invasion?
The war has not just started.
But you
The war
see-
started in 2014 in the Donbass, and we have not done anything
But
about
you see,
that.
Finland and Sweden weren't actually going to go into NATO. But as soon as this actually happened, and naturally they want to. I mean, if you're in Finland with the Russians right on your border. I mean, I spent 10 years in the European Parliament. You don't, when we sit here, we don't actually realise the proximity of Russia, Estonia,
I mean, I
Latvia,
definitely
Lithuania,
know the
all of
proximity
those
of Russia.
countries.
I work
They're
in
all,
international
they are all,
development. I
they
know
are
how to
all
read a map,
threatened. They
Neil.
are all threatened.
Let me bring it to
They
one other
really
thing
are.
very quickly, to all of you. Frankie, should Nadeem Zahawi stand down? I find it extraordinary that the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who sets our taxes, right, I know he's only there for a few days,
I know.
can't do his own bloody accounts
No,
quickly.
Look, I absolutely agree. He should resign. And this happens all the time with the Conservative Party. Clearly, someone needs to resign. They drag it out for ages, therefore...
And this is on Boris's watch,
Yeah.
by the way. This is Sunak's
But
watch.
also, yeah, exactly. And this is infecting Rishi Sunak's integrity. I think we can all agree. It's obvious that Nadeem Zahawi is going to be found
You'd
guilty.
agree, wouldn't you?
He'll have to resign, and it will be Rishi who faces the consequences, but dragged out for weeks. Why do
That's
it?
a fair point, Neil. Come on.
He should resign,
Yeah.
and the ethics advisor should look at the situation. Then, if it's what he's done is not broken the ministerial code, then he can always
he obviously
he can
has.
always come back.
Can I
another
just-
form.
can I just-
In the meantime,
Yeah.
he needs to resign because, as quite rightly, people are suffering with the cost of living crisis. You've got somebody who haven't paid their taxes. Goodness knows what the Tory party looks like.
I completely agree. Denise, just to finish this part, I started with Gina Miller talking about this murky politics. I mean, we've all known for years the backhanders, the deals. It's so out in the open. We talk about the cost of living crisis. We've talked about Ukraine. I don't understand how anybody has any respect for any politician at this moment in time. Do you not agree?
I think we have a crisis of cronyism and nepotism, and that's what you've seen with Boris Johnson accepting loans to refurbish his home, taking free
Richard
holidays.
Sharp denies any wrongdoing at this point.
taking particular holidays, going on, getting.
He's no
support.
longer the Prime Minister. We're talking about Sunak.
No, but the point is the waft of sleaze. It's actually engulfing.
Do you think it'd be any
Sunak.
different under Labour? Because I actually genuinely don't. I think all of them are tainted from top to bottom. I
No,
genuinely believe that.
I don't think that's a fair
fair
assessment.
comparison. They haven't even
I
had
bet
a
we'll
chance.
be sat here in 5 years and the Labour Party and people will be resigning and being found out. I think the question is the sorts of people who now, no disrespect, are in Parliament. I just think the British public have had enough. Stay there, my team, doing brilliantly. Next on JK Live,